What to do with DK Metcalf? That is something that we've talked about a lot here on the Bump and Stacy Show. Him and Gino, right? We're trying to figure out what's going on there. So our guy, friend of the show, Bill Barnwell, wrote this article, and he broke down the wide receiver market and what's going down. There's about 5 categories he broke down. There's 2 candidates to be traded, 4 players who could get released, 6 free agents hitting the market, and best of the rest when it comes to wideouts. How is this going to affect DK Metcalf? I'll give you a few names. The guys to be traded, Tyreek Hill, but he mentioned he wants to stay in Miami, so we'll see. Deebo Samuel just got permission to seek a trade. Then you have the cut candidates, Devontae Adams. Aaron Rodgers is not going back to the Jets, and I think that they got to cut the homie too.
Right.
I don't think they're going to hang on to him as well.
Devontae goes where Aaron Rodgers.
Exactly. That's his boy. You got Christian Kirk as well. You got Cooper Kupp, who's going to look for a new home. You got Tyler Lockett. We're assuming that he is going to be released. And then the top free agents. You got Keenan Allen, Hollywood Brown, Brandon Cooks, Amari Cooper. You got Stephon Diggs. You got Chris Godwin. And then the best of the rest, you got Adam Thielen, Mike Williams, DeAndre Hopkins. Curtis, these are some big names. So when I break all this down, I read you these names. How do you think this affects DK and his value?
Well, if you were trying to trade DK Metcalf, which I don't think there's any indication that the Seahawks are trying to move on from him yet. I mean, we have yet to see how these extension negotiations will play out. But looking at the amount of availability that there is in this wide receiver class, I mean, if you were looking for immediate help at wideout, like why would you want to give up significant draft capital for DK? I get that his age makes him a lot more appealing than some of these guys, especially somebody like Devontae Adams, who's going to be 32, Tyreek Hill, who's 31, even though those guys, I think, talent-wise, offer more than what DK has, at least in terms of like well-roundedness to their games. But there's a lot of available talent on the wide receiver market this season, and I kind of wonder, Bump, like, does that then drive down what teams are willing to give up, because they know that, hey, if we're so desperate for a wide receiver, we can go sign one of these guys that's available in free agency. Or maybe you go out and trade for Tyreek Hill, who I think is more impactful than DK has been to this point in their careers, and then all of a sudden you set yourself up for an even better shot at, contention, because you're acquiring a more talented player. So DK's kind of in this weird spot if you're the Seahawks, where it's like, okay, if you want to move on, and I know, Mike Salk of Brock and Salk has been banging that drum for quite a while now, just kind of floating that idea of like, well, if you do want to trade DK, like that would be a huge boost to potentially rounding out this roster more with more first-round talent. I don't think you're going to get a first-rounder back for DK really at any point in the offseason. So I look at this, Bump, and it's kind of working against any potential trade of DK Metcalf, where it's like, oh, you think the asking price is a first-round pick? Like, I don't think that's reasonable anymore, considering what is out there for teams to acquire.
Timing's everything, right?
Right.
And the reason why wideouts are getting paid the way they're getting paid, I blame Christian Kirk every single time. He started this madness, right? But because he started that, DK has an opportunity to make a whole bunch of money. Timing is everything. Just like we're looking at these names, timing is everything. I guarantee you that his agent is looking at the names that could be available and saying, dang, this hurts my client a bit, because you have receivers that maybe do some things better than DK, that have a better resume. But let me remind you, DK is no chump. I mean, he has...
Exactly.
People forget that he has like 4 1,000-yard seasons. He's had him and Randy Moss are the only ones to have X amount of catches, X amount of yards in the first 5 seasons of their career. DK is no chump. But again, timing is everything. They're going to look at Tyreek Hill a bit different than they look at DK. I think teams are going to look at Deebo differently than they look at DK. And you got a guy like Cooper Kupp, who you can probably get for the cheap because of his past when it comes to injuries. Timing is everything, and I think that this will help the Seahawks, but it might hurt DK.
I think so. I think absolutely. So if you're looking at a potential extension for DK this offseason, Bump, is there any number that you look at and say anything north of that I would be hesitant to give him? I think maybe anything north of 30 is where I start to be a little nervous about paying him.
Yeah. I mean, look, DK, get your money. Get your bag. If you give 30, 35 million, I will stand up and I will applaud you. I'm all for the players getting their money. If I am the owner of a team, I'm punching the numbers. I look at DK and I go, I'll give you like 27 to 30. Let's start there. Because he does bring things to the table that other receivers don't. I just mentioned Tyreek Hill and Deebo Samuel. I'm going to talk about Deebo in 4-down territory. He's an interesting case. But DK has the most 20-plus yard receptions in his 15 games that he played. Now, there are receivers with more 20-yard receptions. I believe like 2 or 3. Mooney's one of them. I think Justin Jefferson is the other one. But they had 2 more games than him. DK is valuable. And whether you like what he can potentially get paid or not, it's all because of the timing. He's available at the right time, and there's someone that is going to look at DK and ponder giving him $30 million. Yeah. For sure. It is what it is. So I think with the Seahawks, it's just going to be a different situation. Who are you going to release? Because you got to save some money. We're assuming Tyler Lockett is going to be one of those guys. Is there a tight end that you're going to release as well? We'll see. Where are you going to save some money so that if you do sign DK to an extension, you give him his $30 million, it doesn't hit the same way it would if all these big names were still on the roster.
Right. And I think, who was it? I think it might have been Bill Barnwell, too, who we had on, and he was talking about Justin Jefferson getting his $35 million a year contract. And it was like, well, if you have a quarterback that is not making top of the market money, like how Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy are not in Minnesota, it makes sense to pay the best receivers in the game the most amount of money because you want to help those guys out. Whereas if your quarterback is making a lot more money, then, hamstringing your cap situation by loading up on wide receiver talent when you have a great quarterback, like, that's going to make things a little bit tougher. The thing is, though, that Geno Smith is not among the top earners at quarterback. Right. He is making well below market value right now on a very team-friendly deal. And even if he does make market value for a quarterback of his skill set, you're looking at, $40 million, which will put him about 12th or 13th. A $30 million deal for DK puts you at a combined $70 million between Geno and DK. That's only $10 million more than what Dak Prescott alone is making.
Right.
So you're looking at it from a business and sense standpoint. It would make a lot of sense to bring DK back simply because you can afford, paying Geno and DK, especially if you're able to make some more cap space for yourself.
And what does Kubiak want? Right. New OC. I'm sure he's looking at DK
wants, a guy like
and
DK.
saying, "Yeah, I could use a 6'3", 225, 4'3" type of dude." So we shall see, man. But the wide receiver market is crazy. There's talent coming out of college, entering the draft this year. It's going to get interesting. So we'll see what they do with DK Metcalf.